Amid the haunting ruins of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, where radiation-infested landscapes merged with the echoes of a catastrophic past, a tale of unspeakable horror unfolded. 5 of us embarked on an urbex adventure, armed with cameras and bravado, seeking to explore the decaying remnants of Pripyat Hospital. Little did we know, the shadows that lay in wait were no ordinary darkness. They were a canvas upon which unimaginable terror would be painted. The night was thick with an unsettling stillness as we crossed the boundary into the exclusion zone. Our flashlights pierced the gloom, revealing a landscape of desolation and decay. The hospital loomed before us, a skeletal monolith veiled in an unnatural mist. An aura of malevolence clung to it, a silent warning to turn back. We should have listened. Breaching the hospital's shattered facade, we entered a realm of unreality. The air was thick with an acrid stench, a mix of rust and rot that crept beneath our skin. Our footsteps echoed, as if the very ground was reluctant to bear our presence. In the distance, a faint whisper tugged at the edges of our hearing, a mere wisp of sound that seemed to taunt our sanity. We ascended to the upper floors, each step carrying us deeper into the abyss. Time appeared to warp, the hospital's corridors twisting and contorting as if alive with a malevolent intent. Our flashlight beams faltered, casting disorienting shadows that seemed to dance in mockery. The air grew colder, and our breath fogged with an unnatural chill that clung to our lungs like a vice. The upper floors held the remnants of the hospital's past, a discarded gurney, a shattered glass partition, and faded signs that hinted at the despair that had once filled these halls. Our cameras clicked, capturing the decay that surrounded us. But as we delved deeper, the air grew thick with a sense of unease, a sensation that crawled across our skin like 1,000 tiny spiders. In a forgotten corner, we found a room unlike any other. The door creaked open, revealing a tableau of nightmarish proportions. Operating tables, rusted and stained with an unspeakable residue, stood as grim sentinels. Surgical instruments lay strewn across the floor like a macabre game of chancy. The room exuded a malevolent energy, a force that seemed to seep into our very souls. And then came the whispers, an insidious chorus that slithered through the air, a cacophony of agony and torment that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. We exchanged terrified glances, our camaraderie dissolving in the face of this unthinkable horror. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around our senses, their words indistinguishable, yet suffused with a haunting urgency. From the heart of the room emerged a figure, a specter shrouded in the tattered remnants of hospital garments. Its form flickered and twisted, as if reality itself could not fully contain its malefic presence. Its eyes, twin orbs of blood-red light, bore into our souls, freezing us in place. The whispers swelled to a crescendo, a maddening symphony that reverberated in our minds. "Stay," the figure hissed, a single word that echoed with a command we were powerless to defy. Time warped and fractured as we stood there, helpless pawns in the grip of an otherworldly force. The walls seemed to close in, their very geometry warping with a malign intent. The figure approached, its every step a promise of unspeakable torment. With a desperate surge of will, I managed to break free, my screams mingling with the cacophony that pursued me. I fled the accursed hospital, my sanity hanging by a thread as I stumbled through the corridors and emerged back into the moonlit embrace of the exclusion zone. The memories of that night are etched in my mind, a tapestry of horror woven from the threads of darkness that clung to that forsaken hospital. The whispers, the specter's gaze, they are scars that will never heal. My urbex adventure had plunged me into a nightmare from which I could never fully awaken. A chilling reminder that some places are shrouded in darkness for a reason, where the echoes of torment remain eternally bound. As I emerged from the depths of that cursed hospital, my friends were nowhere to be seen. Their fates, sealed within those walls, remain a grim mystery. The shadows claimed them one by one, swallowed by the malevolent force that had taken hold. I am the sole survivor of our ill-fated expedition, haunted by the knowledge that they are forever trapped within the echoing corridors of that forsaken place. The cold, unforgiving walls of St. Jude's Hospital hide secrets darker than the night that shrouds them. I speak now not as a witness, but as a survivor of an unspeakable terror that unfolded within its heart, staining my soul with a horror that will haunt me until the end of my days. It was a night that unleashed nightmares from the darkest recesses of my mind, an ordeal I can barely bring myself to recount. As a young nurse on the night shift, I had heard the rumors of a forsaken ward on the 4th floor, whispered in hushed tones among the staff. I dismissed them as mere superstitions, the tales of a haunted hospital spun to frighten the uninitiated. But I would soon learn that the stories held a kernel of truth, a terrifying truth that would unravel my sanity. One fateful night, an emergency call dragged me into the depths of that forsaken place. The forgotten ward beckoned, its heavy metal door creaking open with a bone-chilling groan. The corridor stretched ahead, bathed in a sickly green light that cast elongated shadows like the fingers of death. The air was suffocating, a cocktail of mildew and decay that clung to my skin. The first step I took into that corridor seemed to release a wave of malevolence. The very air seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, and the flickering lights above seemed to dance to the rhythm of a sinister symphony. It was then that I heard it, a whisper barely audible yet crawling with an unnerving insistence. "Help me," the voice hissed, weaving through the shadows like a serpent ready to strike. I followed the sound, my heart racing in my chest, my footsteps echoing a hesitant rhythm. The source of the voice emerged from the dark, a patient, a gaunt figure in tattered hospital garb. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, devoid of humanity. Their outstretched hand trembled, fingers crooked as if beckoning me towards an abyss. Fear clenched my heart, but a morbid curiosity compelled me to approach. The voice, once a whisper, grew louder, filling the corridor with its chilling cadence. "Help me," they repeated, and this time their voice held a note of urgency, of a soul teetering on the brink of oblivion. I reached out, my fingers brushing theirs. At that touch, a wave of images surged through my mind, like a floodgate of horror flung open. Visions of cruel experiments, of patients writhing in agony as their bodies were subject, the scent of burning flesh and the anguished cries that pierced the air like a symphony of suffering. The patient's grip tightened, their bony fingers digging into my flesh, pulling me deeper into their twisted memories. I was trapped in a nightmare not my own, a spectator to the cruelty that had unfolded within those walls. I watched as doctors, their faces contorted by madness, wielded instruments of torture with clinical detachment. Patients became playthings, their minds and bodies broken in the pursuit of forbidden knowledge. As the memories engulfed me, the hospital itself seemed to awaken, a malevolent entity feeding off the torment it had witnessed. The walls pulsed with a sickly rhythm, and the very floor seemed to writhe beneath my feet. The patient's grip finally released me, and I stumbled back, my mind a cacophony of horror and disbelief. The once dim corridor had grown colder, a frigid wind carrying with it the stench of death. Shadows writhed, contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to leer at me from every corner. The patient's voice grew louder, a symphony of agony that reverberated in my skull. And then, as if in response to their plea, the lights flickered and died, plunging the forgotten ward into darkness. I fumbled for the exit, my heart racing, my breath hitching in my throat. The corridor twisted and turned, an endless maze that seemed to shift and rearrange itself with each step. Finally, I burst through the exit doors, gasping for air as the cold night embraced me like a lifeline. Days later, the forgotten ward was sealed, a tomb to bury the horrors that had unfolded within. The hospital staff averted their eyes, their faces etched with a fear they couldn't suppress. But the memories, the haunting melody, continued to torment me, a relentless reminder of the darkness I had borne witness to. On a chilly autumn evening, I stood before the foreboding facade of the abandoned hospital, its windows shattered, and the walls wearing an unsettling shade of gray. The air seemed to carry a sense of unease, as if the very place exhaled a forewarning. I'd heard the tales of Twilight Hospital for years, stories of inexplicable disappearances, eerie sounds, and shadowy apparitions. Despite the trepidation clawing at me, curiosity beckoned, urging me to step inside. The corridor lay dimly lit by flickering overhead lights, casting unsettling shadows that danced along the walls. Mustiness permeated the air, mingling with the sense of decay that twisted my stomach. As I treaded further, a soft creak resonated through the passage, arresting me in place. I strained to listen, my heart a drumbeat, but the subsequent silence intensified the unease. With my flashlight beam darting about, I revealed cracked doors and peeling wallpaper. Frozen in time, the hospital's inhabitants seemed to have vanished suddenly, leaving their stories etched into the surroundings. Suppressing my apprehensions, I ventured onward. Each step echoed in the corridor, a rhythmic reminder of the building's hidden narratives. A patient's ward beckoned, and I entered, revealing rusted beds with shredded mattresses and exposed springs. A bone-chilling gust wafted through the room, raising goosebumps despite my attempts to dismiss the unease as mere nerves. Then the faintest whisper brushed my ear, nearly indistinct in its words. My heart thudded, and I spun around, greeted only by solitude. Time warped as I pressed forward, my mind conjuring phantoms with every movement at the periphery of my vision. The sensation of being observed intensified, mingling with the growing dread weighing down my chest. A pair of double doors loomed ahead, and I hesitated before entering, stumbling into a long-forgotten operating room. A rust-covered surgical table occupied the center, surrounded by shelves adorned with obsolete medical instruments. But it was the walls that seized my attention, adorned with faded handprints, as if anguished souls had sought escape through sheer desperation. The realization of the suffering and fear seeped into my bones, rendering me motionless. Intent on leaving, I was plunged into darkness by a sudden gust of wind that extinguished my flashlight. Panic surged as I found myself enveloped by darkness, the memory of those shadowy figures fresh in my mind. Fumbling for my phone, I cast light upon the room, revealing the grim surgical setting once again. And there they were, shadowy figures congregating around the surgical table. Their forms were elusive, yet their malevolence hung heavy. I stumbled backward, my breath erratic, and the figures drew closer, their movements unnaturally fluid. Desperation overcame me as I backed into a corner, the cold wall chilling my back. They neared, their whispers escalating, insistent. Eyes clenched shut, I sought to block out the horror, but their voices infiltrated my thoughts, a chorus of anguish and despair. Then, as abruptly as it began, the whispers ceased. Opening my eyes warily, I found the room deserted. Silence reigned, an all-encompassing void. I fled the room, propelled by an instinct to escape. Outside the hospital doors, the biting night air greeted me, a stark contrast to the suffocating ambience inside. I never looked back, propelled by the memory of that night. It had transformed me, leaving me haunted by the whispers, shadows, and the feeling of being ensnared where time and sanity faltered. Even now, as I recount my ordeal, a shiver courses through me and the sensation of scrutiny lingers. So, reader, should you ever find yourself drawn to an abandoned hospital's corridors at twilight, remember my story, and if whispers beckon in the darkness, heed the warning. Flee before Twilight Hospital's horrors claim you too.